Good morning, everybody. It's me, Miss Dome. I did not get to see first hour yesterday because we were on a delay, but I did get to log into fourth hour. So I do have a little presentation for you today, what we were going to do in class if I was there. So we're going to go ahead with that today. And it is knife skills. So it's third quarter. So we're going to go back into some kitchen things. We didn't do a lot in the kitchen second quarter except for our Christmas projects. So we are going to go back to learning some things about the kitchen. So we will review food safety next week, but I wanted to go ahead and get started on knife safety because that is something we have to do before we start doing anything else in the kitchen from here on out. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let me see if this will. Safety tips. So you always want to use the correct knife for the task. So how do you know which knife to use, right? So I want someone, let's say Emily, if she's there, to go over to the kitchen in station 1 and see if you can find 3 knives for me. So if you're looking at the sink, in the drawer next to the sink on the right hand side on station 1, if you open it up, the knife should be in there. And I want you to find the red knife, the green knife, the purple knife, the little tiny blue knife, and the big blue knife. That's 5 knives. I don't know how many I said to use, but try to get those knives. Those are the Cuisinart knives that we have. So you can pause this until you get your knives. So now that you have your knives, you always want to use a sharp knife. These knives are sharp. Trust me, they are sharp. Next, I want you to watch this little video, and so you can just pause this recording and watch this video on learning how to sharpen your knives. It's only less than 2 minutes long. We won't be sharpening knives, but it actually is a pretty cool video. All right, so next, we're learning about the 3 essential kitchen knives. We have a chef's knife, paring knife, and serrated knife. So the purple knife, the big knife that's in the purple cover, is what we call a basic chef's knife. The paring knife is the little tiny blue one, and the serrated bread knife is the yellow knife. Did I tell you to get the yellow knife? So the yellow knife is what we call a serrated knife, and you cut soft things with a serrated knife, like bread, so they don't tear. So a little bit more here about your chef's knife. It should be, or oftentimes is, the largest knife in the kitchen. It should feel balanced and comfortable in your hand. And it can be used to cut any food that will be chopped or minced or needing a cutting board, including herbs, watermelon, all types of fruits and vegetables. This is your all-around go-to knife. This is what you're going to use on most of our tasks when we cut. A paring knife is a very small knife. It's used for peeling fruits and peeling vegetables or to create garnishes. It's for things that are small, that are not going to take a lot of time or effort, or really, really easy things to cut. I like to use the paring knife when I'm cutting things like celery. You can also use a chef's knife, but since it's so small, I think it's good to use that. I like to use the paring knife when I'm cutting up, just want to make little chunks of herbs. I don't use it when you're cutting something bigger, like an onion, or it shows here an apple. To peel the apple is fine. You do not want to cut the apple with the paring knife because it's just not long enough and the blades aren't long enough. The serrated bread knife is very sharp, but the way the blade's made, it allows the bread to be sliced easily. The yellow knife is what the knife is for, is the serrated knife. So we also have the big green knife, and if you look at it, you'll see that it's got a chunkier blade than the chef's knife, a little wider. It's called a Santoku knife, is what it's called actually. So it is used kind of like a chef's knife, but it's best used for larger things. Like when we would get the huge zucchinis out of the garden at the beginning of the year, I would like to use that one to cut through those big zucchinis, to cut them down smaller. Or anything that's kind of hard to cut through and you need a little tougher blade to kind of put pressure on it. So that is what the green knife, the Santoku knife, is used for. That dark purplish blue bigger knife that has the funny rounded blades, that is a utility knife. Now, a utility knife is used to cut things that are just really tough to cut. Like if you're trying to cut a hard piece of fat or ligament off of a piece of meat, you could use that utility knife. We will not be using that utility knife very often at all in class. We will mainly be using the chef's knife, the paring knife, the serrated yellow knife, and we will also be using the red knife, which is a slicing chef's knife. So that is also kind of a chef's knife, but it's a slicer. So this one is good to use when you're slicing things like tomatoes or anything you want to make nice and even. But it's also good for meats, for like cutting pieces of chicken really, really thin, like for fajita strips, or beef to cut in nice thin strips. So that is what that red knife is for, is to slice things up that you want to slice nice and even. So the next thing is, how do we hold the knife? So I want you to pause the video here, and I want you to watch the video, which is 2 minutes and 40 seconds or 39 seconds of how to hold the knife. Next, which statement best describes the speaker's viewpoint about knife safety in the presentation? Always keep your knives sharp. Always store them point down. Wash them in the dishwasher for a thorough cleaning, or cut only with the tips. A, always keep your knife sharp. A dull knife is more likely to cause an accident or a cut than a sharp knife. We don't point them down because that dulls the tip. We don't typically like to put them in the dishwasher because they could get dull from other things banging into the blades. And we cut with the whole knife, not just the tip. We use the tip to kind of balance and then use the middle of the blade. Next, using the knife to chop. This is the claw technique. You use your non-dominant hand to stabilize the food. So here it's called, the picture shows an onion, and you're going to use your claw and you're going to hold it, and then you're going to use the hand you use to write with, your dominant hand, to slice. And so you have your knuckles against the side of the knife so your fingers won't get cut, okay? That's using the claw technique. Here is another video, it's very, very short, about the claw technique. It says, don't lift the edge of the knife above these knuckles. 90-degree angle on this section of the fingers to act as a guide for the blade. Fingertips curled back toward the thumb, like your claw here, and thumb tucked behind the fingers. So this is going to protect your hand. That is called the claw technique. So you can watch that video and then move on to the next slide. Which statement best describes the speaker's claim about the use of the claw in this video? The claw is a specialized paring knife that removes the tough part of the meat. The claw is the safest way to hold a butcher knife. The claw is the position for guiding hand when using a knife. The claw is a butcher knife that will cut through any type of food. The claw is the position for the guiding hand when using a knife. That's what the claw means, the claw technique. All right, incorrect knife usage. Notice the way she has her knife. Her hand is positioned. She's not using the claw technique. She's not got a good grip with her thumb on the knife. The guiding hand is not in the claw position. And the knife has left the board. So the tip of your knife should stay on the cutting board, and you should guide it on the way down. Cutting tips. Cut away from the body, slowly with care. Make sure to cut with dry hands to prevent slippage. Keep distractions out of the kitchen when you are chopping. Pay attention as you chop to prevent injury. Anytime you are chopping fruits and vegetables, chop it in half first to create a flat surface, and this will give you better control so the food won't roll under the knife. So those are your cutting tips. Cutting board. Next thing. Use a clean wooden, bamboo, or plastic cutting board. We have wooden cutting boards and we have plastic cutting boards. Avoid glass, ceramic, and marble cutting surfaces because they dull knives. We don't have those. Stabilize the cutting board by placing a flattened, damp towel under it. So you get a towel, you dampen it, you wring it out, and put it under the cutting board, and that's going to prevent that cutting board from slipping and going everywhere. Okay? So that is one thing you want to do when you use the cutting board. Now, our plastic cutting boards are green or red. So this is something we learned in food safety, but it goes along with knife safety as well. Green is for fruits and vegetables and anything non-meat or pre-cooked. And the red is for raw meat. So red would be if you're cutting up a chicken breast or cutting up beef, steak to cook in a fajita, or if you're cutting any type of pork or whatever that is raw, you use red. You use green for fruits and vegetables and anything non-raw, and you would use the wooden for the same thing. So never interchange those cutting boards. That's just a way we keep things safe and prevent cross-contamination, which we learned about in food safety at the beginning of first quarter, and we will revisit that next week. Carrying your knives. Hold it by the handle with the point of the blade straight down at your side. Make sure the sharp edge is facing behind you. If you're carrying the knife over to another station, I would prefer you keep the blade cover on it at all times. Put the blade cover back on and take it to the other station. Don't try to catch it if it falls. Step away and let it fall. I'd rather it fall straight down and hit the tip and ruin the knife than to fall and you try to catch it and hurt yourself. When passing a knife to someone, lay the knife down on the work surface or pass it carefully, holding the dull side of the blade with the handle facing toward the other person. So hold the dull side of the blade. Also, when you're cutting and you cut something and you go to rake it off the cutting board into a pot, rake it with the dull side of the knife, not the sharp side of the knife, because that's going to dull the knife. So that's just another little tip there for not dulling the knife. All right, we've already went over the cutting boards. Have at least 2 separate cutting boards to reduce the risk of cross-contamination. One is for raw meats, poultry, and fish, and the second is for vegetables, fruit, and other foods. This again is cutting board safety and sanitation. Sanitize the meat cutting board with a solution of tablespoon of chlorine bleach in 1 gallon of water. Replace the cutting board when it develops significant grooves. Disease-causing bacteria can grow in the grooves. This is why we do not cut raw meat on the wooden cutting boards, because the wooden cutting boards have a lot more grooves in them than your plastics do. And the plastics are new as of last year. So I have a few more things to go over, but this video is getting ready to end. So this is video 1, and we'll start video 2 in just a few minutes.